We'll go ahead and get started. Thanks everybody for joining. So the purpose of this is kind of a chance for parents to ask any questions you may have on our reentry plan. There are a lot of different stakeholders here from the school that we have joining us in case there's any questions that they need to jump in and answer. Dr. Clendening's here. Kim Sperling, our Director of Mental Health, is here. Matt Sprout, our Director of Technology. We have some teachers in with us. Robin Betts, our Director of Communication. And I think I saw Dr. Werlin, our Assistant Superintendent. So got a lot of different people in here joining us in case we have questions that they need to jump in on. So we are recording this just in case there's parents that can't join in. So we'll have that recording so that we can share that out once we get done. And so I'll just start with, again, the purpose is answering any questions that we have on reentry in case there's anything that pops up that you need some peace of mind on. That's going to help you make an informed decision on, whether or not you want to choose virtual learning versus in-person learning. So I'll start with, the plan has been in progress for a long time now. We spent a lot of time collaborating as a cabinet with the school, spent a lot of time collaborating with the state of Indiana, the CDC, Johnson County Health Department, and some other professionals in public and pediatric health and education. So there's been a lot of collaboration taking place to develop this plan. The plan is a fluid plan, could change depending on what numbers do. So just keep that in mind. But so starting here, I just open it up. If any parents have questions, feel free to use the chat bar or you can unmute and ask your question.
Well, Cole, since we're waiting on some parents to kind of ask some questions, I'll go ahead and talk just a little bit about some things that we're hearing and things that we had in our reentry plan. First, I want to talk about is masks. That's the first topic that comes up often, and we are requiring masks in our district. You're going to be required to wear a mask on the bus, as when you enter the building and when you're in the hallways and when social distancing cannot be maintained in the classroom. Our classrooms are about 900 square feet, give or take, depending on classrooms and different things, but it's about 900 square feet. And if we cannot keep that 6-foot barrier, we are going to require masks. The CDC and more importantly for us locally, Dr. Mormon, that we've been in contact with, said there are really 3 things that we can do to mitigate the virus. And that was one of our main goals. And one of them pertains to wearing a mask. Second one is washing your hands. And the third one is social distancing. And until we get a vaccine, we're going to need to make sure that we follow those. And the reason we're producing our reentry plan at this point is so that people, moms and dads and guardians, can make that decision what best fits their families in terms of a virtual world or an in-school world. And that's something that we want to make sure everybody is clear on. On the bus rides, we're going to limit the number of kids on the bus to 2 people per seat. So we're going to ask moms and dads to help us in that social distancing. But we're definitely trying to put out that message that wearing that mask helps my friend, and my friend's mask helps me. And same with the teacher. We know there are going to be times when people feel like they got to take their masks off and that. In our district, we have purchased for the teachers 3 masks, and at Webb, actually there have been 4 because we had a person adopt your school and they wanted to make masks, so they did, and we're very appreciative of that. For the kids, I know that we have at least 2 disposable masks and 1 cloth mask coming from the state that we're going to get to everybody. But we're encouraging parents also to get a mask that fits their children, because there are definitely sizes and differences that feel good and bad. I can tell you that I'm trying out a whole bunch of different ones, and my wife says, "Why do we keep buying masks?" and I'm just trying to find the best one as we travel forward. But we are going to have masks on, and yes, we wish that were not the case, and it didn't have to happen. But if it helps save one person from getting COVID, it's absolutely worth it, and we are going to do it.
Yeah, and I will say too, with the generosity of some local churches, we also have more masks coming too, 1 for each kid. So we'll have another set of those, and then working with another group to provide another one. So our goal is to have as many masks on hand for kids so that we can help with the rotation of having a clean mask for the school day. So we'll definitely have plenty of those. I had a couple questions come in. The first one from the Rowland family, wanting to know what recess and lunch will look like, and then also with specials. So recess, we're rearranging our master schedule to make it to where only 1 grade level is going to be out at recess at a time. Kindergarten and first grade has 2 sections, and the 2nd through 4th has 3 sections. So we are working on a rotation where like one classroom will have the playground area, 1 classroom will have the blacktop area, 1 classroom will have the field area. And then that'll be on a rotation so that every class can have each section of the playground throughout the week. But ultimately, our main goal is to keep our classroom sections kind of as like a family unit, and trying our very best to make sure that we don't intermix those family units of classrooms. So that's one of the ways that at recess that we're going to accomplish that. So we will be able to go out to recess. Kids will be able to play, but they'll have a certain part of the playground that they'll be able to have for their classroom. Lunch, we are working on using the cafeteria and gym so that we can social distance students. Again, in that setting, kids will be social distanced. And then we're also keeping our classrooms away from the other classrooms. So you won't have and all the seating for lunches will have assigned seats. So students will sit in the same seat every day. And again, they'll be sitting with at a table socially distanced, facing the same direction as other classmates in their classroom. They won't be sitting with another student from another classroom at a table. And then with specials, specials are going to be coming to the classrooms. So we'll have art, music, PE, and STEM all going to the classrooms. PE is going to be outside as much as possible. On days where there's inclement weather and we can't get outside, then Mr. Hartman is going to be getting creative in some of the things that he does in the classroom. So he's prepared for that. We actually just talked about, I just had a meeting with our specials teachers kind of ironing out some of those details about a half an hour ago. So we're on the same page there. So they will still have the access to those specials classes, and the specials teachers will just be coming to them. Let's see. And a follow up to that, I see that will masks be required during recess and specials. So during recess, that's a time where it's outside and that's not going to be required. Again, I had a parent ask at the superintendent's coffee with the superintendent last night if they could contact the school and make sure that their students wearing their mask at all times during the day. And that's absolutely a request that I'm willing to work with you on. So, I mean, if you want your student to be wearing their mask, we'll make it happen. So anything that we can do to help you out there. So that's kind of where that is. Specials, it's in the classroom. If they're at their desk facing the front and they're social distance, they don't have to wear their mask. It's going to be, like Dr. Clendenning mentioned, you know, our desks are going to be spread out. Our classrooms are going to be taken up mostly with desks. And so ultimately, if a student gets up out of their seat and they're walking through the room to go ask the teacher a question, they're going to need to put their mask on because they're going to be coming in close contact with another student or an adult in the room. So anytime they'd have to get up out of their seat to walk through the room, they'll definitely need to put their mask on, since the social distancing won't be able to happen at that time. But if they're in their seats, they're all facing the same direction, then know that it won't be a requirement at that point, but they absolutely can if they want to. And then Amanda Ott, I see that you asked about specials and then also library visits. So we will still have library visits, and library books will still be utilized. It'll look a lot different because we won't have classroom visits to the library. So to help with the social distancing of that part, we're going to be working with our librarian media person, and they'll be working on a schedule to get groups of students to come to the library instead of full class groups. So that'll just be how it's a little bit different in helping to maintain, proper social distancing. When the books come back from the students, they'll be sanitized, wiped down, and they'll be out of circulation for 24 hours before they can be checked out again. Let's see. Natalie, for kindergarten, Chromebooks will be provided where there'll be special cases provided, or is that something we can purchase? So the Chromebooks, and Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but Matt purchased cases for all of the Chromebooks to go home in, so that way they're nice and protected. Those cases are, they have padding on each side, so it'll help protect the Chromebooks. But the requirement for those is that they will need to go home so that they can be charged at home that night and then brought back the next day. Does that all sound correct, Matt? You're muted. Matt, you're muted.
So yeah, that's exactly what my thoughts were. Good job, Cole. So they will go home for kindergarten. So they'll actually go home for grades K through 12, and they'll need to be charged there. Obviously, as we move out of the kind of the COVID and at-home learning, and we start looking at e-learning days because of snow and bad weather, remember we used to close school for that, the students will have the device with them. So in preparation for that, K-12 devices will all go home. Thanks, Cole.
Yeah, no problem. And we're excited about that. That puts us at 1-to-1 K through 12, which is an awesome thing. And the kindergartners are getting those touchscreen Chromebooks because, as we found during the at-home learning experience, if we provided a Chromebook to a kindergarten student that had to use the touchpad, that was a bit hard for a kindergarten student to accomplish. So that was one thing that Matt was able to accommodate for us, which we greatly appreciate. Let's see. So Heather Harris asks if there's been additional staff hired to manage the task of cleaning the building. I haven't seen Jeff on this one. That might be a question for Dr. C.
Yeah, so what we are doing is looking at cleaning. We have purchased a solvent, actually, that will help us in expedition process of cleaning the building. We know that it's going to be a journey that we have to take, and that product is used in oral surgeries and for burn victims, and it comes out in a dispenser, and we'll be able to do it quickly. But as far as adding additional staff at this point in time, we have not added staff. We're just going to look to kind of streamline some practices that we've done in the past to ensure that we have a safe building and a clean building.
So then the next question from Jenny Pieper, when will we find out about what areas will have transportation provided and what areas will be in the no bus zone? What precautions are the schools taking to allow students to walk or ride bikes to elementary schools to ensure the safety of the students?
I'll take this one, Cole. So I'll take this one. So on the, we looked at a variety of options for getting to school. We're going to ask parents to help us with that. And so there's not going to be an official no walk zone. The reason is when we looked at the data, and even though like Webb, a lot of your kids can get to school in a safe manner, there were areas in our district that had major crossing spots and places that were not quite as safe because sidewalks weren't developed, et cetera. So we're asking moms and dads to partner and say, yeah, absolutely walk your child, ride your bike. We'll have bike racks out there, but we will not be adding a walk zone to our transportation structure. If we struggle with social distancing and we're asking moms and dads to partner with us and bring their kids to school, but if we are struggling with that, then what we'll end up doing is actually moving the secondary times further away from the start of elementary times. And that would give us more buses at each of the routes to accommodate that.
And Jenny, that's something too that when we first started talking about the possibility of more kiddos walking or riding their bikes, that's something that we talked as a group. And I've been in contact with Grace Church, who has been amazing in this whole process. And they've even mentioned that if it gets to that point, we do have students walking, riding bikes, they would have people that would volunteer to kind of monitor the roads where they're coming from. To kind of be like a cross guard and directing traffic and helping make sure kids are getting where they're supposed to be safely. I would ask, though, that if a student is walking or riding a bike, that they are escorted by a parent, because the intersection right out here by Grace Church is a very busy intersection during our arrival time. And that can be a dangerous intersection, even if we do have adults out there. So just make sure that, be mindful of that if you are planning on having your child walk or ride their bike to school. And Amanda Ott says that Julianne says yay to library visits. Not surprised by that. She was our first 200 point accomplishment last year, and we enjoyed some Wendy's lunch because of that. So I'm not surprised by that at all. And Molly, is it possible we may wear masks if singing indoors? We are waiting for some additional studies to come out about how much of a concern singing is and if masks can mitigate any potentially increased risk during singing.
That wasn't a question for you, Cole. I was just trying to provide some extra information about music specials.
No. Oh, yeah, and I misheard that. I thought
me.
you said, is it possible, and not it is possible. There you go. I appreciate that. Thanks, Molly.
Yep.
All right, and then will parents be allowed to join their child for lunch or class parties, assuming class parties are still allowed? So as of right now, that is no. We are not allowing extra lunch visitors in the building, just trying to make sure that we help to limit the amount of visitors that are coming in the building. And one thing that we're trying to accomplish also is, if there's any kind of business that needs to be done with paperwork or anything like that, we're encouraging parents to call the office first. And then that way, once you get to the school, we can bring it out to you to fill out, and then you can just fill out that paperwork. We can come out and get it when you're done. And again, like I said, we're trying to limit the amount of people that are just coming and going into the building. So we are going to allow, if those class parties of, birthdays and that kind of thing, if we want to do something special, that's perfectly fine. But with the visitors, that's where, as of right now, we're not allowing extra visitors in the building. And let's see. So Heather says, I would love for my children to walk to Webb, and several parents have asked if they could drop them off at our house and walk from here, but there are no sidewalks. And again, that's the part about the neighborhood, that it's right here. I mean, that neighborhood's right next to Webb. So it makes sense that they could walk, but there's no sidewalks to walk on. And as you guys know that live in that neighborhood, and what I've heard from those people who do live in the neighborhood is that cars fly up and down that road. And so that's what makes it tricky also. And so, like I said, if we can make it to where if you want your kids to walk or anything like that or ride bikes, just make sure that you're doing that with them as a parent and making sure everyone's safe. If you are planning on doing that, let me know, because like I said, we do have community members that are willing to help out and willing to be that extra adult on the streets and make sure that everybody's getting to where they're going safely. So Amanda asked if there will be extracurricular activities or clubs for Webb. As of right now, we are not doing extra a few months once school starts. And if we feel like we're at a point to where we can accomplish that safely, then we can reevaluate that. But as of right now, we are not going to be doing any extracurricular activities or clubs. And the main part about that is just because, we're trying to make sure that we keep those class families together and we're not intermixing students. So that's kind of where that is right now. Another one coming in, looking ahead, and you may not have an answer for this yet. Once a vaccine is available, would parents be able to sign the form that you offer for those who choose not to vaccinate if we are choosing not to take the vaccine? And that would probably be a question for Dr. Mormon, but then it would also fall back on policy. So I'll let Dr. C if you want to jump in on that too.
Yeah, as we go to school, I would, and projecting that the coronavirus vaccine would be a required one, then it would be required. And yes, policy does, or state law provides exemptions, etc. And you would just need to work with your clergy or religious reasons why you wouldn't do that in order to be exempt. But we still require immunizations for all kids to come to school, and that hasn't stopped. And I would just assume that the coronavirus vaccine will be added to that list. I mean, it's had such a dramatic impact on school and society that it will be a part of that. If I would imagine. So we will require it if the state law requires it.
Perfect. I don't see any other questions popping up right now, but I know everybody's probably read up on the plan and everything, but I feel pretty confident in what we have in place right now. Both my boys will be coming in person to school starting the school year. So unless anything changes. So like I said, I feel very confident that what we have in place is what's best for kids. And we're going to accommodate whatever needs we have for all of our families, whether it's in person or virtual. But like I said, I feel confident and both my boys will be here. So.
Mr. Zook, I want to talk about social emotional learning for a second.
Mm-hmm.
And what's happening. Obviously, Webb, you guys have the newest faculty member is a chocolate Labrador called Millie. Her name is Millie, and she is very excited to come to school. So she will be coming to school, although there are going to be some pretty strict procedures and policies put in place, both to help the students and Millie. And one of the main handlers at school, obviously, will be Mrs. Clendenning. And, when she comes in to bring Millie into the class, we'll have the kids wash their hands before Millie comes in. We'll let them, interact with Millie, but then we're going to wipe Millie down again after she leaves the classroom. That this was part of the SEL work. There's Millie kind of sticking her tongue out at everybody. If you have a chance to see your screen, Cole showing us. She's a very smart dog. I heard the example that she has a PhD, but she's a kindergartner, and some of her excitedness, and I would agree with that. She likes to get out and play and run around and different things, but she will be a part of the journey. Also, Mrs. Clendenning will continue to do small group and individual work with kids. But that's where those masks and those social distancing things may not be able to allow them to take their masks off, but she will continue to work with that. And furthermore, on the SEL side, continue to work with families. We realized that COVID-19 not only had a physical health impact, it had an emotional health impact. We are anticipating a lot of stress from a lot K-12 about coming back to school. And I think we can all imagine what it's like when you're going to be with 200 of your best friends and you've not been around your best friends except for one or two persons, and what that's going to be. And so we're going to continue to work on that, but we are going to make sure that though we do maintain that social distancing, maintain a safe environment, and Millie is coming to be a part of the journey.
Yeah, and we're really excited to have Millie. In my teaching career at Edinburgh, we always had a therapy dog, and to see the impact that the therapy dog has on students and staff is just phenomenal, and the research behind it is amazing. So we are super excited to have Millie as part of our team. All right, so I don't see any other questions popping up. Dr. C, do you have anything else that you wanted to share with everybody?
We'll just talk about special education for just a second. I know we have Mrs. Scott on, who's our director of special ed, and there are questions that come up and some other conversations about, are we still going to have all the services for a child, and what about their IEP and those things? So, Mrs. Scott, can you just talk just a little bit about what it's going to be like if the student does have an IEP?
Sure. For our students who have IEPs or Section 504 plans, we will continue to implement those IEPs in the in-person setting. So if your student's coming back to Webb, obviously we will use social distancing and PPE to help mitigate that virus. But if you are considering a virtual option, our goal is to certainly implement that IEP to the fullest extent possible. But if we find that what's written in the IEP is difficult to implement virtually, we will come back to the table, review the IEP, and revise that. And there are some certain situations, like physical therapy is a difficult one to do virtually. We can do some things, but we may have to come back and revise for PT if necessary. But otherwise, we are moving forward implementing IEPs.
All right, thanks. And then Dr. Warland, could you talk just a little bit about if a parent is considering virtual, is it a lock? If I sign up yes today, I'm locked in for the semester. Can you kind of walk us through what's happening with virtual learning in our reentry plan?
Yes, and Jen, thank you too for that segue. And again, thanks everybody for being here. So actually today, this afternoon, you will receive an enrollment form. And on that enrollment form, it's going to ask you right now on August 5th, what is your plan for each of your children? Is it a virtual environment, or are you coming back to the building to see Mr. Zook? If you decide to go virtual, we released some details about that design on last Sunday. So that came out and was sent to families. You do have a grace period. You actually have a couple of times when you can make some decisions about what's best for your family and for your child based upon what's happening in our environment and the behavior of the virus. So August 5th, we start school. You will have until August 28th to test whatever environment you're in. So if you're back in the building and you see Mr. Zook every day and it's going great, fabulous. But if you decide something has shifted in your family and by the end of August on that 28th, you need a shift to a virtual environment, that's great. If you're in a virtual environment, vice versa, and need a shift into the building to see Mrs. Lucan every day, then you can make that shift as well. We are also allowing families to make that shift at the end of the semester. So if the behavior of the virus necessitates that we are still in essence, a dual learning situation where we have some virtual and some face-to-face, you will also have a decision point at the end of the first semester prior to the beginning of the second semester. So we really do want you to choose what works best for you and your child. I do want to point out that if you're in the building and you're seeing Mrs. McGuire, we have a lot of teachers on here, that's great. If you're seeing your teachers every day and you happen to become ill, or someone in your family becomes ill and you're quarantined, your student is quarantined for a period of time, you will continue to work with classroom teachers. Your classroom teacher, if it's Mrs. McGuire, you will continue to work with her on assignments and what you're missing and still staying in connection with that classroom, just like you would now. So really that particular process hasn't changed. Now I will tell you, we will be using Google Classroom. So that should be consistent, whether you're in the building, whether you're out because you're ill, or you're in a virtual space. Google Classroom will continue to be our learning platform. We will use that on a consistent basis. You will see in virtual as well as in the building. The same curricula with everyday math. You will see similar curricula in music, in ELA, English Language Arts. So I want you to know those consistencies will happen, and we will find a time for you to pick up those resources, textbooks, workbooks, if you decide to choose the virtual environment.
Perfect. Yeah, so after this session, I mean, we have this recorded for other parents that aren't on. There's another one at 6 o'clock that I'll be hosting. We'll record that one too in case any other questions pop up. And then once we get those, we'll get those sent out to everybody. But I just appreciate all the work that everyone district-wide has put in at the central office level, teachers, the collaboration that we've had, and the community support has been amazing. So I just remember that we're all in this together. We're all here to help each other out. And this is going to be a year that, you know, I'm sure no one's ever had to experience before. But, you know, it's all about perspective. And something I told our teachers from the start having these meetings over the summer is that when kids come to us, they may not know any different. Okay, so it's all about a mindset. And so if we come in with the mindset that this is going to be an amazing year and we're going to provide the best experience for our kids, that's what it's going to be for them. And so that's the mindset that we're going to bring to your kiddos. So looking forward to seeing how we can get through this together and how the community rallies around each other and how we can make this an awesome year.
Just a couple other closing things. We have superintendent coffee coming up on the 27th, and two words that I've used often in our conversations, and that is being flexible and nimble in this world. You know, the data continues to change throughout each day. And just want to let parents know we're monitoring that. We're continuing to reach out to key stakeholders like Dr. Mormon and sharing information. I'm also in touch with the school board. So we'll keep everybody informed. I'm going to start doing Friday conversations with the community through YouTube. Also, I meet with the teachers virtually twice through YouTube, where I tell them updates about what's happening. And that will continue and probably even pick up more as we get going. But if you have a question, please get to Mr. Zook or any of the teachers and make sure that gets flowed to the appropriate authorities. But we are looking forward to getting back to a new normal. And then when the vaccine comes, we're looking forward to getting back to just normal. And that will be good. So thank you, Mr. Zook, for hosting today.
Yep. Thanks, everybody, for joining.